Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to the First Nations Housing Conference, Day 3. I'm Darlene Tay Pompey. I'm from Nukunigoning First Nations, and I'm with the AKRC Tribal Council. I'm the Economic Development Advisor for the Tribal Council. And I want to introduce you to Najma Bel-Rashed. So Najma Bel-Rashed is a lead technical advisor for the NBC Part 9 Housing and Small Buildings team. She joined the Codes Canada in 1999. She has a background in architecture and urban design. She has expertise in code development system and special technical expertise in fire protection and use and egress with focus on Part 9 of the NBC Housing and Small Buildings. Welcome, Najma.
Thank you, Darlene, for the introduction.
Do we have a...
Yeah, thank you, everyone. So I thank you also the First Nation Housing Conference for inviting me. Special thanks to Jonathan Gregg, who got in contact with me to make this presentation. It is always a pleasure to be part of this great event. I have been participating to this since I think 2017. I only skipped the one last year. So Darlene, I can now put my presentation on the screen, share my screen. Just give me 1 second. Do you see the first slide? Okay, good. So as I said, during this presentation, I will provide really a high-level overview of the significant changes developed during the 2015-2020 code cycle that relate mostly to Part 9 housing and small buildings, and the changes that I'm going to present are all recommended for publication in the next edition of the National Building Code. Here you can see the numbers of the proposed changes or PCFs, and the number of public comments that Codes Canada has received and addressed since 2016. PCF is the term that is used for proposed changes, and public review comments. You can see also the number of the public review comment related to Part 9 are shown here in green columns. So due to the unprecedented number of PCF and also a high number of public comments that we received, coupled with the difficulties with COVID-19 pandemic, the review of the 2019 and 2020 public review comments took us over a year to complete. And we were all working remotely for more than a year now. And there are still some proposed changes for which we haven't yet completed the public review because we received really a very high number of comments. But overall, more than 400 changes will be included in the coming edition of the codes, not only the NBC. As you can see, it's going to be for the plumbing code, fire code, energy code, and building code. And they will be published simultaneously in December 2021 for both French and English versions. As you can see again, we have a 1 year delay, and this is thanks to COVID, where there is a 1 year delay in our publications. Here is the outline by subjects of the important changes that I will present this afternoon. So let's start with the first one. I selected close to 9 changes related to health and fire safety in use, I will speak about smoke alarm and smoke detectors, asbestos, safety glazing, new home type care occupancy, protection of windows in residential occupancy, and some of stair design changes. So according to the current code, suites of residential occupancies can have smoke detectors instead of smoke alarms if they fulfill a few criteria. One of these is that their sounder base can sound audible signals within the individual suites, but the current code didn't specify what the sound pressure limits were like. So this change clarified that these sounder bases are subject to the same sound pressure limits as other alarm signals, meaning they should be between 75 to 110 decibels. The removal of reference to all asbestos in the National Building Code, particulate asbestos from building materials can be potentially dangerous and can cause really adverse health effects on building occupants and those handling the materials during especially installation, maintenance, or demolition. So these materials could release particulate asbestos when damaged, cut, drilled through, etc. So as such, asbestos-based material should not be used where a person could be exposed to it. And because of this, all references to asbestos in the National Building Code have been removed or qualified. And as we know, Canada banned the use of asbestos as well before this change came into the code. Safety glazing, this is mostly I will talk about the wired glass. Wired glass is used by designers in doors and windows, particularly in fire separations. The problem is that there were a number of documented severe injuries resulting from human impact with wired glass in windows and doors, mostly occurring in schools. So two measures are introduced to limit the probability of human impact. Restrict the use of glazing in locations where human impact may reasonably be expected and this is in assembly occupancies. This is outside Part 9, but the Part 9 houses will be affected, and I will explain this in a second. And also introduced a standoff distance between the glazing and the adjacent walking surface to similarly lessen the probability of human impact with the glass. But in other occupancies, and this is where Part 9 is involved, dwelling units, for example, the concept of location subject to human impact is not applied. This is for now. And the use of traditional wired glass is not restricted with the exception for taps and showers enclosures, meaning that we cannot use wired glass in bathtubs and showers enclosures. And the task group on safety glazing has phase 2 for the 2020-2025, and we may see other restrictions as well in the coming years. This task deals with exploring alternatives of providing affordable and safe care in family type environment. Right now, except for children's custodial homes and convalescent homes for ambulatory occupants, care occupancies are currently subject to the requirement of Part 3 of the MBC, which requires sprinklers. Sprinklers, along with other design considerations required for Part 3 buildings, increase the construction costs, which affect the feasibility of small care facilities, or the change of use of existing single-family detached dwelling to small care occupancy. So next. So to allow these facilities, a new subset of care occupancy called home type care occupancy is recommended for Part 9. As you can see, the existing B care occupancies, B1, 2, and 3, they were all under Part 3 of the National Building Code, and they are all based on protect in place measures. Meaning that we keep people inside and we try to save them by using sprinklers when there is a fire. And that compensate for the difficulty of conducting a full evacuation of these facilities in a timely manner. In a new B4 occupancy or this home type care occupancy, we're not going to use sprinklers, and it's possible to use construction techniques that are similar to those used for other residential buildings in Part 9, allows the alteration of existing homes into home type care occupancies. This is good news for people living in remote locations, so they can keep their elders and there, for example. Ensures adequate full evacuation of residents in a timely manner. And how? By limiting the number of residents in this new type B4 and their location only on the first floor. By setting requirements to have 2 barrier-free egress paths, including ramps, and by also requiring a fire alarm system and a fire safety plan. Moving into another topic, protection of windows. So every year across the country, an average of approximately 400 children under the age of 10 are treated in hospital emergency rooms for falls from residential windows, with the majority of falls occurring among children under the age of 4. And approximately 80 to 100 of the injured children are admitted to the hospital for further treatment and require specialized follow-up care. So it has been a very outstanding issue at the codes for at least 3 code cycles, but thankfully we have now a new set of requirements. The problem is current NBC requires that openable windows in buildings of residential occupancy be protected by a guard or by a mechanism capable of limiting the unobstructed opening. And this is to minimize the likelihood of small children falling significant height from open windows. However, this currently existing requirement they do not apply for windows in single-family dwellings, meaning that single-family dwellings, row houses, private homes are exempted from this requirement, and this is regardless of the height of the windows, and it has been a problem for many, many years. A change to be introduced in the MBC 2020 now requires that more openable windows in single family dwellings be protected by guards or control mechanisms. So the exception to the requirement to protect windows is now triggered when the height from the finished floor to the bottom edge of the openable portion of the window is more than 900 millimeters, and 900 millimeters is consistent with other guards requirement in Part 9 of the NBC, or when the height from the floor or ground on the other side of the window to the openable portion of the window is less than 1800 millimeters. Now going into some other changes in stair designs, and I'll start with the open risers. Open risers are common architectural features, but can be problematic to some users. People who have some limitations on their mobility, such as leg braces, prosthetics, and canes, crutches, use closed risers to guide them where they place their foot or cane. So the closed risers, they increases the safe use of stairs for many people. The change now limits the use of open risers to certain locations, as you can see on the screen. Open riser will not be allowed in Part 9 public buildings. However, interior and exterior stairs that serve not more than one dwelling units and a house with a secondary suite will still be allowed to have open riser. Another stair design in the guard, this is the open stringers. The limits on the size of the open stringers is not clearly addressed in the NBC. The change sets the limit for the triangular openings formed by the stair riser, the stair tread, and the diagonal bottom element of the required guard, as you can see on the screen in the illustrations. It states that this triangular opening should be of a size that prevent a 150 diameter sphere from passing through. And this opening, the limitation, they should limit the passage of a 9 to 11-month-old child. So this is also related to fall through a guard or through the openings in the stairs. And this is not an uncommon requirement. The 150 millimeter sphere criteria is currently in place in other codes and standards, such as in the United States and Australia. The last change for that pertain to the stair design is related to the landing. The code doesn't require landing between the door and the stair when the door swings away from stairs. And this is because a floor space or physical distance similar to a landing is created by the door swing when someone opens it. And you're going to see it in the coming slides, some illustrations. This space allows users to back up before starting their descent and provides a distance between them and the edge of the first step. So people would not just open a door into steps and fall over. A new change then introduces an explanatory note to clarify the intent of the code. And by default, these notes also means that in case of a folding or a sliding door at the top of stairs is used, landing would be required if determined not to meet the intent of the code. As you can see in these illustrations, here is where the code doesn't require a landing here, because here the dots are people. So people would back up and create this space that would like give a certain distance and an eyesight where the stair starts. Whereas in these two situations, this is a very, very dangerous situations. In this, we need to provide landings. So next set of requirements that relate to the spatial separations, I will talk about 3 changes. Area of individual portions in the exposing building face. I will talk about detached carports serving 1 dwelling unit and some clarification in the terminology. Let's start with the first one. So this is related to how we can divide an exposing building face of a house into individual portions and for the purpose of calculating, for example, the glazed openings. So for the purpose of calculating the maximum aggregate area of glazed openings, the current spatial separation requirements allow the area of the exposing building face to be calculated as the area of any number of individual vertical portion. of an exterior wall measured from the finished ground level to the uppermost ceiling. However, in situations where there are horizontal portions of an exterior wall, for example, a recessed or setback second-story wall, as you can see in these illustrations, this permission was not applicable, and this is it was demonstrated that this is contrary to the intent of the provision when it was introduced in 1995. The provision back then did not specify vertical portions, but rather stated the exposing building face may be divided up to any number of separate portions. So the change reinstates the original intent of the provision by clarifying that the exposing building face is permitted to be divided on any number of individual portions for the purpose of calculating the maximum aggregate area of glazed openings. The second one is about detached carports. The code is silent about spatial separation requirement for attached and detached carports located close to a property line that serve one dwelling units. This has led to enforcement problems and inconsistency in the application of subsections 1914 and 1915 to attached and detached carports. This change introduces a new sentence to clarify that spatial separation requirements do not apply to detached carports serving one dwelling units or a house with secondary suites, and the change exempt detached carports that are not considered as garages as defined in section 935 from this spatial separation requirement. Just note that we solved the case for attached carport, but there is still outstanding work with the detached carports, and the work will continue during the coming cycle. This is clarification about the terminology used to define public circulation spaces. The term public way and public thoroughfare seems to be interchangeable through spatial separation requirements. The question was, what is the difference between the two terms? It was clarified that the term public ways, which is a defined term in the code, and public thoroughfare are different. The term public way encompasses all public circulation spaces, whereas the term public thoroughfare is narrower in its meaning in that it refers only to open public circulation spaces, opens on both ends, that allows the flow of pedestrian or vehicles traffic. So to make some cleaning in the terminology, this change replaces the phrase that we see many times in the spatial separation requirement, this phrase that street, line, or public thoroughfare. People using the codes, they should know about what I'm talking about. So they replaces this expression by just a public way in all sentences within the spatial separation requirement. ICF construction. 9 changes have been developed and completed just for this task. It was a big task, but I will just summarize this in one slide. The requirements for using above ground insulation concrete form or ICF construction have been limited to single family dwelling units, and this is since 2005. However, a suite of changes have been proposed to remove the limitation to single family dwelling and allow other building type up to 2 stories to be constructed with above ground ICF walls using prescriptive requirements in Part 9. So there are also a number of small changes, including a new reference to standards, also how to make attachment of interior finishes, and also about lateral support of ICF foundation walls. Ventilation. I have one change to present here. This change introduces a requirement to prevent the infiltration of exhaust air into roofs through soffits and back into the building through air intake. And I've heard some sessions about the mold and the poor ventilation. And I think this is one thing that may help prevent this kind of problems. So vents for many bathroom exhaust fans and clothes dryer exhausts are placed within the soffit. The problem with this is that the warm, moist air from these locations, which is supposed to vent directly to the outdoor, can short circuit and discharge into the soffit area, causing potential damage to the roof sheathing, trusses, and insulation. As I said, mold, mildew, loss of insulations, R-value, ice damming, and water infiltrations are all possible damages. This change introduces a requirement for an vented soffit extending a minimum distance on each side of a vent. For dwelling units that cannot meet both the invented soffit length and the minimum percentage of attic ventilation, the exhaust fan or clothes dryer vent can exhaust vertically through the top of the roof away from the soffit. Penetrations. Building services needs to pass through walls and floors that may be fire separations. The continuity of those separations is mainly by providing protection at the penetration, and the requirements in the NBC for penetrations that require protections are not clear, and they do not align with current industry practices. Work was done to review and revise the provisions in both Part 3 and Part 9 of the National Building Code, addressing how the integrity of a fire separation is maintained at the penetrations. The changes also align with the industry practices. It is anticipated that this package of changes will give designers additional options for achieving compliance while reducing confusion in the industry. The committees was tasked with the review of over 130 reference standards that have been updated, reaffirmed, or withdrawn. The standards development organizations, or SDOs, such as CGSB or CSA, have submitted standard update summary sheets to Codes Canada. And for each updated standards, the SDO provided us with information on the significant changes to the standards, the rationale for the changes, including an assessment of the impact. And the technical committees, really, they have done a huge work with reviewing all these reference standards and determining whether they are still valid to be referenced in the code, or they should be like removed or qualified. So this was a really great work in cleaning all these standards. Accessibility is another big topic. The accessibility requirements in the code in Part 3 haven't changed much for a long time. And addressing this became one of the Commission priorities, high priorities. Because through an environmental scan of what other provinces and territories, other countries, and various standards are doing, it was found that the National Building Code was quite behind the accessibility requirements. Population demographics have also been changing over the last decades. Many provinces and territories have been developing their own requirement for accessibility, and this is starting to cause disharmony and confusion among jurisdictions and affecting industry regulators and the general public. as these changes are located, we know that these changes are located in section 3.8, but the Standing Committee on Housing and Small Buildings has been involved. So my committee has been involved throughout cross-committee coordinations as Part 9 references section 3.8. 30 changes on accessibility were developed, and they relate into the 5 categories that you can see on the screen. 16 changes for anthropometrics, 5 changes for inclusive plumbing accommodations, 2 changes for including building entrances, 2 changes inclusive access to floor levels, and 5 changes for inclusive signage. Last item on the significant changes is related to the energy efficiency. Although the energy efficiency requirement in Part 9 are not developed by the Standing Committee on Housing and Small Building, it's developed by the Standing Committee on Energy Efficiency. So a new subsection 936.6 was developed for tiered performance requirement. This will offer increased flexibility to authority having jurisdictions. It defines 5 tiers as follows. The tier 1 accounts for the current requirement of section 936. Tier 2 to 5 requires percentage improvement accounting for overall building performance and envelope energy performance without exacerbating cooling loads. In addition to that, to supplement the tiered approach, 2 more new subsections are proposed. The first subsection proposes a prescriptive approach for tier 2. And this is intended to help code users achieve tier 2 energy efficiency performance while following prescriptive requirement with or without conducting airtightness testing. The second subsection provides guidance to code users on how to measure airtightness when required. It offers flexibility to providing the option to choose any of the commonly used airtightness matrix, meaning air changes per hours, normalized leakage area, and normalized leakage rate. So this concludes my presentation, the presentation on the technical changes that will probably all be included in 2020 code. There are 2 outstanding items that are still under review. This is grab bars in bathtubs and showers and lateral loads. Those are really big tasks. Like for the proposed change to add grab bars in all bathtubs and showers is still at the public review stage. We have received over 340 comments for 2 proposed changes. So we don't know yet if there's going to be anything in the code, in the 2020 code on grab bars. Otherwise, the work will continue in the coming code cycle. For the lateral loads, this proposed change deals with updates to seismic hazards values in Canada. These values tend to change as the technology and knowledge improves over time. In some locations, especially in British Columbia, the seismic hazard values will be increased to a level where Part 9 current requirement does not offer a prescriptive solution. So to allow houses to be built using a prescriptive approach in Part 9, new and sometimes more stringent solutions are proposed and required now in Part 9. But as I said, it's still under review. The review of public comment is still ongoing as we speak. And we don't know if this is going to be part of the 2020 codes or maybe as an interim change or just postponed to the next code cycle. Just a quick quick look at what some priorities for the 2020-2025 code cycle. I just put this because those are, we started already working on them, but there are going to be lots of more than this. We're waiting for the task group on priorities, so I cannot disclose any new task if we don't have the firm recommendation that we should work on. But the ones that we're already started working are the ones that you can see on the screen: fire performance of floor assemblies in houses, solar collectors, radon and soil gas mitigation. In addition to the huge work was done on radon in 2010 or 10, I think, but there is more to come. Basements, construction of basements. The Part 9 Illustrated User's Guide, they're going to be an updated version and will be published in 2022. And the codes harmonizations, this is a huge project that will span over maybe multiple code cycles, just started. Because we call it a reconciliation agreement on construction codes, and the goal is to have a more unified codes all over Canada with some specifics for local specifications. I just gonna finish with this. So you have access now to free codes, electronic format since 2019. And there is no, starting now, April 2021, you can have access to free user's guide as well, user's guide part 9 and part 4. They are available in English and in French, and the paper copies are available at a reduced cost. This concludes my presentation. I thank you for your attention. If you have any questions about codes, if you have any inquiry, you can send them to the address on the screen. It is ultimately up to the provinces and territories to make codes interpretation, but we can always try to clarify requirements or find background information for you on why, when a certain change was made, and any other pieces and any questions that you may have. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to present. I hope that I was, I took more than what I was supposed to take, unfortunately. Thank you.
Thank you, Najma. We actually have one question, a couple questions. There was one earlier in regards to the basement doors. Does code require a door at all? So that's one question.
Yes, may I answer?
Yes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, right now there is, yes, there is nothing in the code that requires that the door be inside any house, whether it's to the basement or to the upper floor. There's no requirement. You can have an open concept house without any door.
Okay. And another question, will the new version of the code be available for download free of charge, similar to the current version?
Absolutely. This is something that will not go away. And I don't know when, for example, I don't have this info, but what I understand is that this is now our new way of dealing with the codes and our users. The downloadable version will all be free, and even the codes, like for the, for example, Quebec construction code and other codes that the NRC publishes are also free. Electronic copies are free. If you are from Quebec or you are from BC, or yes, you can have a free codes because the NRC is the publisher.
Okay, then thank you for your presentation. Those were our questions. We want to commission a print from a First Nation. We're from Darrell, Big George, so we're going to have uh, presentation for you for his artwork.
Thank you.
And the Passport to Prizes code for this session is maintain. So people don't forget to enter and go straight to the closing ceremonies, and there's going to be a lot of prizes out there. So session 6 code is maintain. And thank you so much, Nadia.
Thank you, Darlene. Thank you, Chris, and thank you all for listening to me. Thank you.